This is the real test, right, Jesse?
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm realizing we're doing this all on the Wi-Fi, the hotspot, so this might be a little choppy.
Yes, okay. You know, social studies,
AGJP.
Right, up 20 years.
good grade,
Yeah.
good subjects, good
Yeah.
content.
Excellent. Yeah.
You also would make
No, I actually. There we go. Okay.
Okay, I think we're up and running. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March committee meeting. This is ACES. That's our Arts, Culture, Education, and School Committee for Community Board 4. Just a quick update, this meeting will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. We have committee members. If you aren't joining us here in person, just please keep your cameras on if you're joining via Zoom. I also want to welcome you to this new beautiful space. This is what, the first committee meeting in the new office of Community Board 4. So like, congrats to Jackie that you just joined. We're super excited to be here. Welcome to the public for joining us. So our agenda this evening, as always, we'll start with an open session. Members of the public are given an opportunity to give updates to our committee. We then will have a presentation by the New York County Defender Services. And then a few months ago, some of you might remember Prince from the high school Food and Finance Teacher of the Year. He has generously is visiting us today to give us an update on the school and how our community board can continue to work together. So thanks for being here. And then we'll talk, hopefully some of you have seen the email that Josephine, the co-chair of the committee, sent a few days ago about the NYCHA redevelopment plan, some of the soil issues as it relates to PS33. So we'll have a committee discussion on that as well. So with that, I will open it with the public session for an opportunity for members of the public to bring any issues forward to our committee. Carrie, you have your hand raised. Welcome.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me so much. I'm from the Intrepid Museum. My name is Carrie McLaughlin. I'm the director of After School Science Programs at Intrepid. I just wanted to announce that we're going to be doing our 12th annual Girls in Science and Engineering Day this coming Saturday. We're really excited to invite a lot of partners to be part of this day, where we have free entrance for the museum for anybody who signs us in advance. But we have organizations like Girls Who Code, University, Lamont Doherty coming. Con Ed is bringing several different speakers to talk about their careers that they have at Con Ed. One college of Knox is coming as well, and Tannen School of Engineering. So we're just really excited to have, I'm on screen, thank you. So just really excited to have this program. It's just a really great day for students to learn about, again, all the STEM subjects that we love talking about at Intrepid plus more. This isn't a program that's just for girls either. We did like to celebrate women's achievements and women's work that they do, but this is for anybody, families or anyone who wants to come to our museum, again, for free for the day with sign-ups in advance.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carrie. And you have materials with you that you dropped off?
I do, yes. I do have some materials that are here, so if you want to have something before you leave, you can also check out our website at intrepidmuseum.org. And look for the calendar page where you can find the information for Girls in Science and Engineering and Day to sign up.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming by and giving the update.
Thank you so much for giving me the time. I appreciate that.
Before we see if there's anyone else from the public, I also want to introduce and welcome Jessica as our new committee member. So welcome, Jessica. So we'll just continue on with the open session. Any other members of the public, either in person or online, to bring any issues to the committee's attention? Okay, seeing none, we are going to then switch to our second agenda topic, which is we have Diane from New York County Defender Services. Hi, Diane. Nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Diane Lopez, and I'm from New York County Defender Services. And it's a really brief presentation. It's more so for you all to get an idea of the work that we do at New York County Defender Services, specifically related to immigration. So I'm an immigration attorney at the office, and my role is essentially to ensure that our non-citizen clients, are informed of their rights and to ensure that their rights aren't being violated. And the way we do that is, first of all, by providing Padilla advice if and when, they find themselves in criminal court. And we also do Know Your Rights presentations in the community as well. We do that often, especially in this climate, just so that everyone is aware that despite everything that's going on, those rights still exist. And we also assist with affirmative applications when we have the capacity, including, green card applications, citizenships, application, work permits, things like that. So that's a little bit about what the immigration unit does at NYCDS. Obviously, right now it's a bit challenging and we are trying our best to keep up, but the priority is just to ensure everyone knows their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Josephine, did you want to ask any specific questions about schools or?
I wasn't sure if you're going to give a presentation today or not. Were you not going to?
No, I wasn't going to do a presentation. I was informed just to speak on the work that we do at NYCDS.
Okay. So one of the issues, we do have a lot of immigrants in the community and in our schools. And, we're always curious to know how we can support them or make them feel that they are still welcome in the schools. We've seen a drop in enrollment. Many students are not showing up to school because they're afraid that they might get arrested or their parents are separated from their parents somehow. So what can we do to support them and ensure that they feel comfortable going to school?
Yeah, and obviously that's a topic that we're experiencing ourselves, especially when our clients are afraid to go to court, like whatever court. And the most important thing is just empowering them by reminding them that they have rights. I would suggest trying to organize a Know Your Rights training and have both the students, relatives, parents attend. And that way it can be an open session where we can give a presentation, but also answer the questions relating to their concerns.
Okay, so you all go into schools. So if there was a school that reached out to you, then you could have somebody come in and give a presentation.
Yes, exactly. And we have like a Know Your Rights PowerPoint presentation that we present first, and then we do open-ended questions at the end.
Okay. And what is really the law around it? I mean, is it still that, ICE cannot enter schools, is that correct? Or be within so far of the school? Like, how does that work?
I mean, the law around it specifically is that ICE cannot enter and try and arrest an individual without a signed warrant. And when I say signed, I mean signed by a judge. Oftentimes they have administrative warrants, which are signed by supervisors. And that is often what they use to try and gain entrance. But the law itself requires a judicial warrant. If they have a judicial warrant, then they have permission to enter. But if they do not, they cannot enter.
Okay, and is there a specific distance that they have to keep from the schools? If, we have some, block associations that have been helping out, looking out for schools to make sure that, nobody's hanging around the school, making the kids feel uncomfortable. So if there wasn't an issue, is there somewhere that they can call?
Right. I would suggest calling the Immigrant Defense Project, and they have a hotline as well. I can try and pull up the number, and they're able to provide immediate advice if they find themselves in a situation.
The number you could just pass along to Jesse, but I'm just curious to know, is there an actual law though that ICE can only be in a number of feet proximity to the school? Is there?
Right. To my knowledge, I don't think there is a law that suggests that they can't be within a certain proximity to the school. The law itself that really protects the community members, students, parents, etc., is the warrant, right? Like there's nothing preventing ICE officers from walking the sidewalk and circling the sidewalk. What really is um essentially going to ensure that a person's rights is not violated is whether or not they have a signed judicial warrant.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Does that warrant apply to the grounds of the school as well, or just entering the building itself?
Anywhere that's within the grounds of the school. When you say the grounds of the
Can
school,
they go on, yeah, like, can they go onto the grounds of the school, like the playground, for example, without a warrant? Is it just entering the building that they need the warrant, or do they need the warrant to be on the property? The exterior property?
yeah, I'm inclined to believe that they would need the warrant to enter the playground because the playground is an extension of the school. So whatever applies to the school building should apply to the playground. Um, I don't have the definitive answer for that, but I'm inclined to believe that because it's an extension of the school, they also need a warrant.
Can you talk a little bit about what happened at Columbia University and give us an update? You know anything about that?
The student that was detained?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know much of the details of that just because that's beyond the scope of my job. But from my knowledge and from what I've read, that individual was detained because unfortunately ICE gained access to the building by misrepresenting the reason why they were there. And once they got into the building, that's how they were able to gain access and detain the individual. I can't speak to the student's immigration status and immigration history and what what they went through, but all I can say is that ICE did gain access in a manner that one can assume was misrepresentation.
Oh, I saw some hands over here. Marie, did you have something?
I did have a question,
Yeah.
actually, Josephine had asked.
Okay.
And my thought is that I think, Diane, you give the presentations, the Know Your Rights presentations?
Yes, either myself or our colleagues, we do them.
Yeah, I work at a high school in the community. I think it would be great if you all could come and give a presentation, perhaps in the auditorium, but I'll get in touch with you offline.
Yeah, that would be great. And I do speak Spanish. We have a colleague who speaks Mandarin. So we try to, cater to the community as best we can.
Thank you.
Of course.
Great, we'll be sure to share contact information so we can be in touch directly with you, Diane. Was there a question? Karen, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
so I know that at our museum, we've been talking a lot about this lately too. So I was just curious as to if students are outside the building and they're on a school trip, for instance, and something happens at the site that they're going to, like a museum or cultural organization of some sort. I was just wondering what those parameters are related to that as well.
If they're outside of the building and they're on a school trip. Yeah, I think that's where you enter the gray area just because you're in a public space. So ICE officials can make the argument that technically they weren't seeking access. But the reality is that just like if a police officer stops you in the streets, the same way, and if an ICE officer stops you in the street, you ask for the warrant, right? You need a warrant to arrest me. And I recognize that it's easier said than done, especially in light of everything that's happened throughout the country. But there's laws and there's standards, and we need to hold them to those standards.
No, it's just a thought I've been having is when, you're working with obviously the adults and the families, is there anything that you do with connecting the kids with either services or relatives? I'm just curious about what happens when someone comes to you and their family is younger children, et cetera, what happens in that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we usually are only allowed to represent the clients that we get through arraignments, right? But oftentimes, you know, we have an entire family, like you mentioned, where they all need services and they all need, you know, assistance with whether that's an immigration hearing or an application. We do have partner organizations that we refer, let's say, a young child to, so that they can seek, for example, special immigrant juvenile status, right? And the organizations that we partner with, they're able to provide them with hope, like assuming they have the capacity, with legal assistance and also assistance with whatever else they need, whether that be schooling, housing, et cetera.
And probably the last thing, and I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but online there was a moment where you were seeing kids in court by themselves. Is that real? Is that happening? Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see, I worked, I was an immigration attorney during 2016 and, you know, obviously now, and seeing the drastic change in everything that's happened and seeing the shift in advice, it's a lot, if I'm going to be honest. And the main reason is because the laws are constantly changing, advice is constantly changing. So to give concrete advice to an individual like we would have in the past, it's harder now. And a lot of it is just using discretion and, you know, erring on the side of caution.
Hi, sorry, I'm probably off camera, but my question is, I've seen recently a request for volunteers to accompany folks in court or associated legal proceedings. And can you speak to like whether or not you all use volunteers or if there's still a need for that? And if that's,
Yeah.
typically you think of volunteers as helpful, but is that helpful or is it like just what is that dynamic like right now?
I will say I think it's super helpful, right? Because to have somebody on the grounds to witness exactly what's going on and be able to recount it after, or hopefully not, but if somebody gets detained, is super powerful and super informative for like all practitioners. I think it's important. We don't use volunteers, we go ourselves, but other organizations do use volunteers. And I think the most important thing to know if you intend on being a volunteer is just if there's going to be an arrest, don't interfere in the arrest. Obviously, you're allowed to record and just try and get as much details as possible as to what's happening, how, you know, they identified the individual, how the arrest took place, et cetera.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, Diane, thank you so much for being here and answering some of our questions. If it's okay, we'll share your contact information with some of the committee members so they can be in touch with you directly regarding some of the Know Your Rights trainings. I think there's already some ideas with some local schools where that would be really helpful. So again, appreciate you being here this evening and we look forward to staying in touch.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we are going to move to Food and Finance High School. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Really, the floor is yours. We wanted to, you know, use this as an opportunity to reconnect with you after you came to our full board for the recognition of the Teacher of the Year Award.
Of the state, by the
Of the
way.
state, yeah. And I know at that meeting we talked about just ways in which, you know, the board can continue to work with the school, and we're always interested in hearing how our schools are doing, what we can do to be helpful to them. So thanks for coming in and speaking.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. So I am the 2026 New York State Teacher of the Year, but I'm a social studies teacher, 27 years. This is my 27th year teaching, and social studies. I teach AP, African American, and government right now. But I kind of live in the nexus of sustainability, civics, and CTE, career and technical education. So that I kind of combine all of them. Actually, I do combine all three in my classroom. And I believe it's a way to reduce inequities because CTE, career and technical education, creates a dual, it's a parallel educational system where students get their academic classes, but they also get skills in a particular career, right? So whether in my school it's culinary, or it's in software engineering, or marketing, or plumbing, electrical, these are all CTE programs, and this is a federal thing, right? So all across the country, this is the language we're using now, career and technical education. And there is a tremendous demand for it. I would say even on a federal, state, or local level, there are obviously some choke points to supporting CTE. I believe CTE programs need to be expanded because it directly gives opportunities to students to enter the workforce immediately out of high school, and they would be viable in the workforce, right? So whether they go to college, and over 90% of our students, we're Title I school, and for that means that 85% of our students receive a reduced or free lunch, right? More than 90% of them go on to college. And so one of the issues with CTE, career and technical, or as people used to call it vocational, or dual education, like in Europe, they call it dual education, in Germany.
I think we got disconnected.
I agree. I was just trying to let them know that I think they're down. And actually, while we're trying to wait for them, Diane, just to give you a heads up, I'm definitely going to reach out to you because one of our schools is Liberty High School, which is, I don't know if you presented to families there or not, but lots of immigrant families.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we haven't, but yeah, definitely reach out when we can coordinate something.
Hey guys, I'm sorry we bounced off for a moment there, I think, if that's correct. But we're back on. If we lost you, Diane and Jeffrey.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, but we stayed on. We figured it was the in the room issue you identified earlier.
Yeah. We hopefully figured it out. So just letting you guys know we moved. And I realized, Jeffrey, I think you had your hand up before, and I did not see it. So I'm still playing around with the system a little bit. So, but we moved on to another topic. But it's one of
No. I only wanted to know if Prince was a man of his word and brought food from his students as promised at the last meeting.
Well, tomorrow, if you come to our school, our students are catering for all the superintendents.
I'll be there.
So they're going to be working hard. So if you come tomorrow, I can do that. Yeah. Or you can come over. I can cook for you. I can't. I'm a color. I'm a social studies guy, but I can cook. I've learned a few things. Yeah. So I can keep going on and on and on. But I can say the 4 things CTE teachers, and I'm not a CTE teacher, right? But I do consider myself an advocate for CT. Because I believe in cross-curricular work. As a social studies teacher, I'm constantly working with the chefs, and I do a lot of sustainability work as well. And I try to find that nexus. We grow the food on campus, we cook the food, and we try to reduce the waste, right? And that's also about environmental racism, right? If we can reduce waste, those garbage trucks are going into, where are they parked? Where are they going through? They're going through communities of color, right? So best way, and no NIMBY, right? Nobody wants these things in their backyard. So you're not gonna move them, right? Without stakeholders pushing back. So what do? You reduce the amount of waste that is going to these garbage locations so that these trucks don't have to drive through and create asthma alleys, right, that we have. So perception is the biggest thing, I think, but also CTE teachers, they're expected to do so much, right? And so the workload and the need for them to have more time to actually plan, their job is atypical of a teacher, right? They're not just teachers, they're experts in their field. They need to get students up to certification, and that is very difficult without more time and preparation. And I also believe there's a demand for CT, and this is beyond just like the local, I'm kind of talking beyond the local, but there's not enough instructors, right, across the country. And that's true with teaching in general, but especially for CT, with the demand, we had over 1,000 applicants for 140 seats, right? And that's true of like all CTs, right? All CT across the state. I've been going to Buffalo, Erie, everywhere, Saratoga. It's the same issue. They don't have, even if you wanted to expand, which I do believe there needs to be capital investment in expansion, right? But there also needs to be the hiring of instructors. The problem is these instructors would get paid more in the private world than in the public, right? A welder is going to get paid a lot better, right, welding, right, than to actually instruct. So you're going to get these new teachers, like people who just learned how to weld or cook, or people who are retired coming back and giving back to the community. And so there needs to be a thought about how are we going to attract industry professionals into the instructors, right? And then obviously equipment is a big issue, right? On a culinary, things are constantly changing, right? Can you imagine using 20-year-old equipment in a kitchen, right? When the industry in New York City is constantly, it's amazing to be in New York City, right? So you walk into any major restaurant in New York City, we have our students there, so whether in the front of the house or in the back of the house, but they're practicing, right, with equipment that is older. Now we've updated some, but I can say across the board, there needs to be capital investment in updating CTE equipment. All right, so those would be my four things: perception, workload, pay gap, and equipment. Right. If there was some, obviously also I work on sustainability, so I just received a $5,000 grant to expand my sustainability opportunities in my classroom. So I'm going to have some growing towers, but it would be wonderful to have more of that. There's a demand from just in our small school. We're a small school, but I am very sure that if other science teachers, I'm not a science teacher, but I see myself as one. The other science teachers would love to have tower gardens. And my dream is actually to have vertical gardens on the walls, vertical wall gardens in my classroom. We have no windows in my classroom, by the way, none. And mostly none of the classrooms, not in my school, have any windows. So we need artificial light. But I would love to have vertical gardens. That's my dream, and I'm going to make it happen. I am going to make it happen. I want vertical gardens in every classroom. But tower gardens is where we're beginning. We do work with Cornell. We do have a hydroponics bay and a greenhouse, but I want it to greenify. We have no windows, right? So wouldn't it be great to see some green, living things, right, inside the classroom? So that's something I would advocate for from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I have a few questions, then we can open it up to some committee members and then folks from the public have questions. So first, just to orient folks, so Food and Finance is on 50th Street between 10th and 11th Avenue, so in Hell's Kitchen. You said 1,000 applications for 140 seats.
At
What's the
least
total. So that's like the incoming class.
Right, we have
What's the total?
440 students.
440.
So,
Okay.
like I was explaining to Charles earlier, he knows, these schools were broken up, right? So we're in a Park West campus. It used to be one school, got broken up into 5 or 6 schools. So we share certain spaces like the auditorium, the gym, and the cafeteria, which is not a good idea at all. That's a whole other thing, right? And I would ask for a whole big amount of capital investment there to just build new small schools so that we can develop a better culture, right? But I'm just asking. Yeah, vertical gardens, so we'll start there.
And you talked about the bottlenecks.
Yeah.
You mentioned these 4 broad categories.
I have more, but
But are those the bottlenecks that you've identified in terms of sort of teacher shortage?
Yeah, this is probably true nationally.
Yeah. And then I think as far as our committee work is concerned, your priorities in getting those vertical gardens,
Yes.
we would love to have a priority list of capital investments for the school, because we do a capital needs, a district of stated needs every year, where we put in our requests for capital funding with the school construction authority, and we advocate for those. It's not a guarantee, we don't have the money, but we at least put some pressure on the powers that be.
Well, if you tell me the budget, I will.
Well, the budget, the good thing is, it's the city budget,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but we are working primarily with the borough president's office, with our city council members, to do what we can to make sure that funds go to schools that have these high priority needs. So when the time comes, I mean, it could be now, you can send us a list, or we usually do outreach, at the end of the summer into the fall. But we're always, gathering ideas, and as things change, we're always open to receiving sort of what those capital projects would be, so we can put those on. And then I think Josephine, you have some questions.
I just want to talk a little bit more about your advocacy work with Congress, and if there's some way that we can support that. So are you just basically talking about these 4 points that you just mentioned?
So right now, I am advocating on a state level, right? And so, but in 2 weeks, I'll be on the Hill in DC talking to local congressmen, of Jersey and New York, to advocate for this. But the true work really, truthfully, most of the work happens on this level, right? This is the level that actually makes the most difference. Directly impacting our students is the council, right? Or the New York City Council. Then I would say Albany, and then the federal government, right? But I'm learning, so I'm learning about public policy. I'm developing, public policy is developing as I talk to stakeholders. And so if people have ideas, I'm always open to bring those ideas onto the agenda and share.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just curious, how do we change perception? So you said that students.
A campaign, maybe.
A campaign,
right?
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Like actually put a I know New York City Public Schools is doing a lot of things, like just trying to attract teachers, for instance, which I'm part of actually. So you might see me, you might picture them on a New York City subway next month, starting next month. But it was just surreal, to be honest. But I would trade that in to have some sort of campaign, because it's really about perception, right? How do you change public perception? So media really does help. Education of students at a younger age, access to CTE opportunities before 9th grade, right? Students need to see, going to a court, right? Seeing these opportunities, going to a school that has a kitchen like ours, just access to these opportunities, because I realize not everybody has those experiences, right? Some parents are able to bring their kids everywhere, right? And show them all these opportunities that life has to offer. And some parents don't have that opportunity. They have to work, or they have to worry about the things that Diane was speaking about, right? So I believe, schools could do more, like even at an elementary school level, to bring kids on field trips to work sites, right? And just learn what opportunities there are, right? And just have them thinking about that before 8th grade when they're starting applying for their high school.
Yeah.
So they can find the right place. And, shouldn't start in 9th grade.
So they.
I mean, I only figured that out things when I was 21, right? I was a pre-med student,
Don't worry.
right? I was completely different. Most of us figure out things, I'm still figuring, right? But if we can expose children to these ideas early, I think that would be part of it, and that some sort of media campaign would help.
So the kids in the CT schools, they come out with a high school diploma like everybody
Right.
else, and then student certification.
Yeah, so each industry is different. So each industry has different certifications. So with culinary, our students have, they graduate, within 9th grade or 10th grade, they get a food handler's license, which you always need one person in every food outlet, right? Every restaurant needs to have one person always to have a food handler's license. Usually you get that when you're working and your boss says, hey, you need to go take this exam, and and you have to pay out of your own pocket. We pay for it. And so the kids are having that in 10th grade. So that makes them marketable immediately, right? And then our students go through a national program called CCAP and NOCD. These are two different programs, and they're for scholarships and also for certification. And it is grueling, right? I mean, it's very competitive, it's very stressful. Can you imagine a New York City kitchen? How demanding we are, right? Yes, that's right. So sending things back to the kitchen. So they are, and they get these scholarships. So usually full scholarships to places like Johnson & Wales or CIA, Culinary Institute of America, right? Or even Cornell. Like, we have students every year, 1 or 2 students go to Cornell because they have a hospitality program there, right? So they get these certifications. So every industry, every CTE program has different certifications that they do.
Is the campaign, like the purpose of the campaign is to get more federal resources to expand to more schools, to create more schools, to help preserve programming?
Ironically, I think both political parties support career and technical education. Ironically, just recently on the federal level, they cut grants to CTE programs, even though the president supports it. So I'm not sure if there's a miscommunication on the federal level. I don't really trust the federal level, right? I don't trust the state level. I just advocate. I'm just hoping, but I know that changes happen closest here on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what we can trust. This is where the change happens. You guys know, you live in this neighborhood, you can, right? On a federal level, things become obtuse, right? And then there's a lot more stakeholders pulling at those individuals, right? But this is where the change happens. You are the change makers, right? And I really do appreciate being in this space because it's unique for a teacher to be here.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what you think about BOCES in other parts of the state.
Yeah. So I grew up.
Wait, what's the question?
BOCES. So outside of the 5 big cities in New York State, so in New York City, I think Yonkers, Albany, Buffalo, and Rochester. Those are the 5 big cities in New York State. They do their own thing. So like New York City, we have our CTE programs, and so if you go into food and finance, there's kitchens, but then there's also
It happened again.
Yeah, I suppose we just sit tight again.
Yeah.
don't have as many students, right? So they actually pull to BOCES. So they have different issues than New York City, right? Our kids can go anywhere by subway. It's pretty easy, and they go to a school and they stay in that school and they get bold, right? But that's not how usually it works, because I think BOCES needs to be expanded too. But they have other issues. Transportation is number one. The cost of it is, I mean, some kids are traveling an hour by bus to get to their skills, right? Their culinary program or their welding program, right? And that's tough. And they also get it much later. They only get it usually in 11th and 12th grade or just 12th grade, right? Our kids in New York City are getting it from 9th grade, right? So there's a disparity there. I do believe they need to be funded also, but that's on a state level, I think. And they're trying. I mean, on a state level, I know there's a lot of push, but there's a lot of mouths to feed, right? Everybody's pulling at Albany
So I guess my question would be, the model is fascinating. Like they bus the kids from their regular zone school.
Yeah.
Does that serve as a model New York City could potentially use, like having an actual school that's dedicated to CTS and they go to their zone school for half a day? Is that double the capacity of that CTS school, or no, it does not work like that?
So here or
here, if we were to do one school dedicated CTS BOCES type school,
I mean,
Would
it wouldn't work.
it would.
I mean, because right now our students, the system we have right now, I think is good for New York City.
Gotcha.
Right? It's like two different environments. Our city is amazing. I realize that, always, right? Born and raised here, but what's interesting is we have the subway, right? And most of my students are not from Hell's Kitchen. Okay. Let me just point that out right now. They are traveling from Staten Island, from Far Rockaway, from Cortland, Van Cortland, from Jamaica, Queens. But they are taking the subway, and they learned that in 9th grade. It might be the first time they're really traveling like that. But from 9th grade, they are traveling, and all our kids are doing that across the city, right? But then they go to that program where they get the academics and the CTE program, right? So they don't need to be bused after school, right? And it's just more efficient, right? I mean, they get such a sustained ability. I mean, imagine the amount of time they waste in travel. In our school, that travel time means they're after school in the kitchen, working in an after school club, right? Doing other things. Like, it's just, we have an incredible system, but it's huge, right? So to educate parents would be great, right? Like 8th grade, 7th grade, educating parents about CTE programs also, letting them know about the options. And for some families, it might be seen as a backup plan, right? And so depending on the communities, right? Some communities see it as like, I don't want my child to do that when we came to this country for other reasons, like my parents, right? They would not have liked it. But I have a 9-year-old, and let me tell you, I'm not a betting man, but I think I like guaranteed payoffs, and CTE is one of those. And I would put my son in that. And if he decided to go to college or not, and he just did that, and that's hard for me to say because I grew up in a community where education is like paramount, right? Like I had no choice, right? I would put my son in CTE programs, right? I'll let him make those choices. If he's a welder and plumber, he can pay my credit card. So,
Yeah, you mentioned about the demand for your school in terms of number of applications versus number of seats. Do you have any sense for the other CTE programs across New York? Is there that gap? Is there the opposite gap? Because you're saying more parents need to know, but if there aren't enough seats,
yeah. So it is. Yeah, you're right. That's the choke point, right? The choke point is we don't have large enough capacity, and the bigger than that, we don't even have the instructors to expand. I mean, how do we even find one more chef who wants to teach kids, right? I mean, that's a whole different language, right? Like, it's not just teaching and cooking, right? It's teaching. And so there are alternative pathways the state provides where they, any CTE teacher, they get 18 credits, 6 courses they take in pedagogy to understand, so that everybody, when we're sitting down in a staff meeting, we're all speaking the same language, right? And also giving instructors like a chance at like handling the students the right way, right?
I would just think like
Yeah,
one, we should,
you're
if we
right.
write a letter, we should like be prioritizing our requests, like, but
Right.
it follows very similarly, I would imagine, with
Yeah.
like making 3PK or UPK and 3PK, like there weren't seats, there weren't enough teachers, and there wasn't advertising, and then there was a gap. Like the city has figured out how to do this. So with that as an example, maybe not exactly, but like has a model to look from in terms of starting a new program or how to expand the program. Like we should think of, like point to that as an example of like what is the blueprint for not putting the cart before the horse in terms of advertising without having seats.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to sort of like understanding what the requirements would be. Like, is it Title I schools that would have to be are eligible? Is it other schools have to be a new school? Can it be something that's brought into an existing school?
I mean, there are new CTE schools opening. I know Northwell opened up a new hospital, health profession school in Queens. I know that because the new principal was our former principal, so that's why I know of that particular school. So yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, just
I think it would be. Oh yeah.
Josh.
So just
Go ahead.
it's kind of an add-on to Jessica's question, but I'm really curious to know Prince's perspective on how the state class size law is going to play out both at the local and state level with respect to CTE classrooms.
Yeah, so that's great question, right? I personally support a smaller class size. I can say that because I always think of my sixth grade teacher, right? Miss Alexander. She had enough time to sit down with me and get to know me and realize that I had learning disabilities, right? I didn't know, I had no idea before sixth grade, right? And so I think smaller class size allows for teachers to get to know their kids. Obviously though, that creates a burden for not to attract teachers, right? And to not just attract teachers, but to retain the teachers that first come into the program, right? Come into teaching. We're seeing, it's not that necessarily we're not attracting teachers, but within the first 3 or 4 years, they're dropping out like flies, right? And so I do believe that's something between the UFT and Mamdani, that's something, that's a huge conversation, right? But I do think that we need to support these new teachers. There's so many burdens that teachers have, and coming into thinking that it's only teaching, right? It is. I mean, there's so much more, So you're going from your student teaching classroom, and then you come into your real classroom, and then you're expected to do these other things. New teachers need more support, and if they can do that, they'll stay in the classroom, right? And they'll be lifelong teachers. They won't be dropping out. So if we do that, I think we can actually have enough teachers to support the situation where we have reduced class size. But you're right, that's a big thing, right? Like class size reduction, we need more teachers, right? I mean, that's what ends up happening. But I think I'm a union guy, I'm a UFT guy, right? I was a chapter leader for the longest time, and I do believe that the union is doing good by us. And if the administration and the union can work together to find solutions, I know they are. They're constantly doing that. I think we can find this. We will be in a better place. Our kids.
Yeah, because I'm just fearful that you've kind of got like the triumvirate of unique problems, right? In
Yes.
CTE, you have specialty instructors that you need to recruit. Recruiting a brand new teacher just in and of itself is hard enough. You have to identify the infrastructure that's capable of expanding those classrooms to host so in a cooking school, for instance. And then the way that the city is approaching the class size law, I imagine
I'll say
CTE
this,
classes
Jeffrey.
are going to get exempted.
I'll say this in a lot of CTE programs, I'm not sure if class size really matters because the physical space doesn't allow for enough students, right? So for instance, I saw in a welding space, right, upstate New York, they literally they only have like silos, spaces for 12 kids, right? So you're not gonna have more than 12 kids learning how to be a welder during that period. You can't force more kids in. It's not like my classroom, right? You can put 34 in, it used to be, right, 34 or whatever. Now, so it's a different ballgame, right? To be able to push kids in, which would mean we need instructors anyway. But yeah.
My last question is, so at the high school, are there students enrolled in a CTE program and some students that are not, or is everyone at Food and Finance part of the CTE curriculum?
So if you're coming to a CTE school, you are being placed in first year culinary.
Got it.
And then sophomore year, it's culinary and baking, and then you do baking 2 in junior year. So you go through the whole process all the way through internships.
And then as far as just outcomes, is there data either at Food and Finance or CT as a whole that we could find or you could provide just as far as more information and understanding for us in terms of placements and where students are going?
Yeah, so
once they
that's
graduate?
one thing all schools are expected to now, right? A few years is that we're supposed to follow our students after graduation, right? So that is something, yeah, I could provide if I talk to my principal.
Yeah, I think in terms of advocating for, I mean, it sounds like an incredible program. And it sounds like, you know, I would love to see a letter come out of this committee. I don't know now or eventually, if we need more information, more discussion about CTE, we can have that conversation as a committee. But it sounds like a real opportunity for students to improve, you know, the schools in our community and the ways in which we're teaching them and career opportunities, workforce development. So I think we want to figure out a way that we can be most helpful. And so that type of information helps the letter, helps sort of inform what we.
If we were to do a letter, is there anybody you think we should have on that list that they should receive the letter?
I mean, anybody on the city council, right? Mayor Mamdani, obviously.
And you don't have to have an answer
Okay,
now,
Mike-
but like the people that you are actively advocating.
I would say Michael Mulgrew, you know, the UFT group, and our chancellor, you know, and our superintendent of this, you know, we have multiple superintendents depending on the school, right? But for high schools, it's Gary Beetleman, right? He's my superintendent. Yeah, but it depends on what the article is, right? I mean, what the document is, right? And what outcome do you want from it? I think, and then if I know what that is, then I can tell you who it is. Okay. But those are the stakeholders that can turn the key and open the door.
Yeah, I think some of the bottlenecks that you identified, we would try to sort of address one or multiple of those through advocating for, if it's, you know, something in the city budget, whether it's something in terms of recruitment method, whether, you know, it sort of, we would have to figure out what that ask would be, but I think it would be something that we're interested in to figure out a way that we can, you know, put something in writing.
Is there any precedent in New York City schools to hire instructors on a per class basis, the way they hire adjuncts for university teaching? So I could see a scenario where maybe like a chef who, you know, works evenings and weekends will come in from 11 to 12 to teach a course, you know?
That happens. I'm not sure if it happens a lot in New York City, but it does happen a lot in BOCES programs. In other parts of the state, it happens a lot because they really don't have any instructors. So they will have somebody do part-time. You know, they might have like a construction business, and they come in the evening and they instruct. I'm not sure if we do that in New York City. I haven't seen that too often in New York City, but out in BOCES, it happens quite often. And around the country, it happens a lot. Yeah.
Do you know of any like policies or laws preventing that in New York City? Or just
I'm not sure. I would have to, then I would probably ask a U of T lawyer. Yeah, I would ask, but that's a great question. Because that's what's happening in other places. Like, you have to find a solution. And there's such a demand for it. It really is an opportunity for a whole family and community to escape poverty. Right? And like every time we say no to a student, we're literally saying no to a whole generation, right? To a whole family's opportunity. I mean, after I've given speeches in places, in Buffalo, I gave a speech to the New York State PTA, and the husbands of the people who ran the PTA, they came up to me, and they did not graduate high school, and they were like, "Thank you for advocating for CTE," right? Because they are all the two men that came up to me. They were successful construction, HVAC. They were in HVAC, and oh my God, they were passing on their business to their sons and daughters, right? And that's the American dream, isn't it? Right? Like, you create a business, you pass it down to your children, and it's like generational wealth, right? But every time we say no to a kid to get into a CTE program, then I worry that some kids are not going to go to college, so maybe, and if they don't get to a CTE program, what does that mean? Like, they graduate with a high school diploma. What does that really mean? It means nothing. It means poverty, right? And so if you want to break the system of poverty, you really have to hit workforce opportunities, right? And you do that in high school, you do that in middle school, you do that in elementary school. Then we can change this. We can end, whatever your politics are, I don't care, right? Let's end poverty.
Right. Yeah, well, our community board's certainly been talking a lot about workforce development, and we've had a couple of meetings on that. So, I mean, I feel comfortable moving forward to do have something to support, but I can't. Does anybody else?
Yeah. I'm happy to make a motion.
I'll second.
First meeting to support outline the 4 areas that you said. Maybe we'll do something with the order there, but to say that those are things that we want to continue to lift up for our local elected officials and partners.
I'll second it. I'm learning this a friendly amendment thing that we do. Can we just add a friendly amendment that we send it to him, for him to take a look at it, to make sure we categorize who we might want to add to the list of people?
If the chairs are comfortable with that.
Yeah, we would love to, communicate with you with a draft letter and make sure yeah, that's great.
That's my first friendly amendment.
So, all in favor? Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch. And again, thank you for coming out.
The teachers are welcome here all the time.
Yes,
But that has to be abnormal.
Yes, definitely. And we love it. We've been trying to get your superintendent table. So if there's any way that you can help us do that, because we would like to support more schools in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
Is your superintendent coming tomorrow?
Probably.
For lunch.
Most definitely. Lunches.
You'll track them down.
Lunches are attractive, right, Jeffrey? Like, food brings people, right? If food was here, I think you'd be on this side of the county. Yeah, but that's true.
Okay, excellent. So we're gonna.
Do you know when the next meeting is?
We meet monthly.
Yeah.
Second Monday.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. We're going to switch gears now. I'm going to turn it over to Josephine to give an update on NETCHA infield development, so contamination, PS33 engagement, and the discussion on that.
Okay, great. So I think everyone read the full board letter that was on this topic. And so I'll just give a very quick recap. So over the holiday, we received, 500 pages of documents about contaminated soil, an application that went to for brownfield cleanup at both NYCHA campuses. And brownfield is basically a state program that encourages developers to clean up the soil, because Manhattan is an old city. People have been doing dumping for a long time, especially in areas that are industrial on the west side. So the first phase of the program is that they get the application. The developer also submits what's called a remedial investigation work plan. It's a draft plan of how they're going to remediate and remove the soil in a safe way. And there's a comment period. And we had asked for an initial extension. They gave us one because, as I said, the documents came over through the holidays. And this is all very technical information. And usually what the process is that you go to the developer, you ask them to come to the community and give a presentation to help us get through some of this material. The developer has declined our invitation to come, and they said that we could submit questions, but it's kind of difficult to even know what the questions are to ask. So we're in the situation where we need to comment on, certainly on 26th Street, because it is in close proximity to two schools, and also many residents who will be living in these buildings while all of this work is going on. And this is just one application that's gone in. They will have multiple applications because this project is going to last up to 30 years, potentially. So this is just the very beginning of it. And the developers, this is actually lucrative for them as well, because they get tax breaks for doing this work. So this is important for everyone to get this right? No one wants to see anyone getting sick or something like this. So the question really becomes, and how do we respond in a meaningful way to the DEC about this cleanup process?
You mentioned the deadline. There's a deadline, March 29th.
March 29th is the deadline. Right. And, it's hard we can't really go into too much scientific information because none of us are engineers and we just don't know. There's a lot that we do not know. So right now, they've only taken the initial samplings of soil, and after this application is accepted and DEC, we did have a call, CB4 had an internal call with DEC, the state agency, and they said that, from their initial looks at the application and all the other documents that were submitted, they most likely will be accepted into the program. There's no reason why they would not. So what happens after that is that once they are accepted in, the developer will go back and they're going to do a much more deeper sampling of what's going on. And this includes sampling of the water, the water underground, because if the contamination is infected the water, then it could have likely spread in other areas. So they're going to have to dig very deeply. This whole process can take from 12 to 18 months to complete from beginning to end. They are permitted still to take down the first building, and they may actually do that before they can dig deeply enough to go down into the soil to get all the samples that they need. So we're kind of in between those two phases. So are there any questions?
Can I
Yes.
add a little
Yes,
further
yes,
detail
of course,
there?
yeah.
I mean, each of these buildings, as just mentioned, is going to have, very well might have this process. But within each of those buildings and each of these applications, there's stages. And so we're in the initial stage. So they're applying for the program. They're going to be considered by DEC. If they are accepted, there's along with all of the actual engineering and digging and science and things like that, there is a significant amount of community engagement they will be required to do. So I just want us to be understanding that this is not the only comment period that we will have on this particular, we will have in general, because like just we said there's gonna be multiple buildings coming down if the plan is goes forward as is, which is all of them. And even within that though, each of those projects would have a community engagement, a required community engagement process, which is not what's happening right now, but what would happen in the future. So I do want us to understand that there will be more involvement, more information being communicated to the point where I think we were disappointed that the applicant, the development team was not willing to present, but they will be required to do so, not just to us, but to the residents of NYCHA, the community at large, and be, and have a series of, they have to come up with a plan that meets DEC's standards. So I will just say that. I mean, I don't want us to say this is our one. Will not be our one bite of the apple, but it is the beginning.
One bite of the DEC has called, they call it the community participation plan. It did not go into detail on what that really means. They did say that there will be another comment period, but I can't be certain that that means that, yes, they're coming in person to give a presentation to the public. I can't be certain of that. I just know that they did say that there will be a community participation plan.
Is there anything in our comment to kind of push for that?
Oh, yes, we can, absolutely.
You know,
That could be.
Just also,
Yeah.
it's just disheartening that we have to wait until they're in the process to even hear about what they already know now. So.
Yes.
I would want to also emphasize just all of the vulnerable stakeholders that are adjacent and the need to be briefing and working with all of them. And perhaps, I don't know if this is a question so much as a request to say that they should be designating funds to address, like we've talked about, you know, air filtration systems, but like what are all of those things that may be required, the advanced monitoring devices that are not just standard, but like the next level. Maybe we have to be asking questions if this is a comment period. I don't know, but I mean, we don't always. Sometimes we just make statements, but I would want to emphasize that, you know, the importance of going above and beyond. And I'm sure we have stats from our district, statement district needs from years past about all the vulnerable populations and South, older adults, the students, etc. I did also just want to add, this isn't, I had to do DEP testing at a warehouse that I used to run in Brooklyn, which was in a heavily industrial site. I have no idea if it's the same. So like take this completely with like the tiniest, you know, with the biggest grain of salt perhaps. But the sampling goes very, very deep, but it's actually very small. And so they do a lot. Like in our case, it was a 20,000 square foot warehouse that they had anticipated had oil below ground. And so they had to do 20 different sites within the space, but each one was like less than this big. And then it was like a needle that goes way down and comes back up. So I don't know if that's what this is, but I would just offer like, and maybe that's a question, like how big is the drilling site? And we want to know that, but it was not, you know, it was not like unearthing a lot of ground to determine how bad the situation was. It was very precise.
Right. They don't want to do that.
Right.
That's the goal. I mean, I think someone said this at the full board, which I'm not saying what their overall statement, agreeing with their overall statement, but is at the end of the day, if you're not going to build a new foundation for a building, you're not tearing up the ground floor, right? If you're just renovating a building, that stuff that's underneath all of that soil could stay there for the end of days and we'll never know about it. It's when you're going to tear it up. And so they don't want to do that and do that and create a whole mess. So they're going to do a very concise, small set of, many, but concise digs. And they're only going to really have to be responsible for wherever the contamination ends, right? So if it goes down 15 feet, they have to have a plan for 15 or maybe 20 feet for a buffer zone. They're not going down 50 feet, right? The contamination ends after 20. That's what they know they have to do when they're not going to be, going to the core of the earth, core of the earth to try to say they solved everything. I just will say, I think what you've hit on, what Charles hit on, and what Jessica's hit on, I think what you're saying is I think really where we are, if you guys want to comment on this, it's really about the uniqueness of this project, the size of this project, the different stakeholders, the different difficulty of communication, and getting the word out to folks, and the effort that DEC needs to bring maybe this project to as highest standard as possible. Not that DEC is like, working on not having high standards, but I just think we have to recognize this is a multi-site, again, if the plan goes forward as presented, we're talking about every building is being demolished, and every building is going to, a new building is going to be built, and it's foundational work. It's multiple, deep digs, and so that's just very significant. And so we would want, I don't know if there's, I don't know if we know what we want yet, but we definitely know we need a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
And translations, services, all of that stuff, communication.
Well, communication has been something that has been lacking a lot in this process so far. So even though we might not know everything that we are asking for, we do know that communication is going to be key among the stakeholders in any process moving forward. So I think, Charles, to your point, I think that sort of touched upon making sure that happens.
I was just going to say that one of the struggles is we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And I think I have reservations, obviously, about sending questions, but I do think if there's a letter that's the way Jesse summed it up, I think makes sense, but also making work for a certain thing, what the letter can mention.
Kind of like if A happens, then we.
Well, definitely that, I don't know if they're required to come to community board, but I do know that there is supposed to be community participation, but mentioning that in the letter.
Yes, yeah,
Having a presentation.
right,
At some committee,
yes.
is what I'm thinking. And then also, I don't know, did we? No, we didn't, but I don't know if it's appropriate for the letter, but I'm also thinking about some kind of, I don't know how it would work, honestly. I was thinking about like some kind of task force or some, we already have the working group, so that could handle.
I think the process question is sort of like, in which way are we going to bring forward questions, comments, requests to this? And has that been sort of, do we know how that's being facilitated? Do we know if committees are putting together
Yes, right now, so the letter will come out of exec.
Okay.
So the, 4 committees are putting together comments, and we're going to put it all in a letter together and send it to your committee, housing being one. So, like one of the
only thing is we already had housing.
Oh, okay.
And
Well,
did we?
Okay, then we.
But I think we know I think.
Well, we can still incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. We can incorporate your comments into the letter. But one of the things that we can certainly ask for, there was another development at 250 Water Street, which was across from another school, an elementary school. And Gail Brewer was the borough president at the time, and she was able to secure $50,000 worth of funds from the developer to hire a private engineer for the school, third-party engineer for the school to handle very specific needs that they have. There's also preschool down there. So that is another thing that I would like to include in the letter, that our current borough president work with the developer to set aside funds to do that. Because we've been on calls, and Jessica has been on these calls as well, and getting them to agree to anything, a filter, city-wide windows, anything to make the project less detrimental for the kids who are there, so they can still learn while the construction's going. We have not really gotten an answer on anything. So it would be really helpful if they get this pot of funds and do what they need to do with it, and not have to rely on, keep going back to the developers. So we can end that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Is there anything else?
How much overlap, is, first, I guess a question for Jesse. What was the final outcome of item 20 at full board? Is that the one that got sent back to committee and there was no formal vote on, or did we ratify that?
Yeah, I'm not good with numbers. What was item 20?
It was the clue committee that came out of exec for ratification on the brownfield site at West 19th Street.
Oh, yeah, no, that was fine, that went,
Yeah, no,
yeah, that was just
I think
the,
Yeah.
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 I'm just curious then how, if that was ratified, how much overlap between the two, like, because Elliot's at 19th and we're talking about a school that's 26 and it's all related to NYCHA. Like, can we kind of piggyback on Clue's efforts here?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, yeah, it's a different application, so it has a slightly different timeline. But I mean, I think those requests, I think it's clear, unfortunately, those requests are not going to be met at this point in time, right? The two major requests from that letter are not being met. The extension of the 90 days is not going to be met, and I think the presentation is not going to happen currently. I think we can say, taking some of that language and saying going forward, right? We're saying we're demanding, that a very robust community engagement, which is including community boards or the community board committee, but that we be included in those community presentations, and and doing I will say doing a more enhanced job at putting out notices on these comments periods. I mean, we got, as Joseph said, over second after December, we got a link which had thousands of pages of material, and then separate from that was a one-page letter that got stuck in the mail, snail mail, saying, "Oh, there's a comment period." So it's like, and I will say we responded to the environmental engineers who issued those notices, and they've completely correct. They sent them over the email next time, and so that's why we're much more on top of this one. But let's be realistic. Like, we need to, that has to be put out there a lot to be able to get real comments. As we know, that when we're trying to get comments from the community and the separate stakeholders in this project, is very hard, right? To get, we can hear the same people again and again and again, but if we're trying to get a broader sense of what's going on, what's being heard, it's not easy. So there needs to be that effort. So again, I think what we're saying though is all of this stuff is, we're writing this to DEC. Remember, we're writing this to, we can know that the applicant is getting a copy of it, but what we're really saying to DEC is, like, we expect DEC and maybe our elected officials to use their political capital to really make sure that this is done in a transparent and effective way as possible.
Do you recommend, should we bring these, do we need to vote on these comments that people have raised, or can we bring them to exact?
I don't, I mean, in my opinion, I don't necessarily feel the need to vote on them. I think you can say, let's collect all of your comments.
Yeah, okay.
Let's say by a certain date, so then you and Josephine are walking into exec,
Yep.
or even prior to that, because you have to have the letter kind of, exec doesn't like voting on letters that they haven't seen before, but like at least an outline of what we're talking about. And so therefore, I think if there's, I don't think there's any disagreement on anything that we've said. So I think if there's, if there's a process disagreement or a content disagreement, then maybe we need to vote.
If you think of something afterwards, just email Josephine and I.
But my only thing is, do we include the local business community as a stakeholder?
that wasn't I mean, we could.
I'm only
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah.
because, we're talking about stakeholders, and if it's isolated to just those in NYCHA, other people in that community will also be affected across the street from whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm thinking back to like the 9th Avenue water line replacement and involving small business services and outreach to those businesses along 9th Avenue when that work was happening, and how critical that was in terms of when water was being shut off and notification. So I would say
They have the
yes.
same thing on 10th Avenue now. Like,
Yeah, so I would say yes, right? No reason not to put that. So yeah, good thing that.
If we add, well, I was going to mention it's the DEC, but I was thinking also the mayor's office.
I mean, we can copy anybody.
Yeah.
We can copy anybody.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, or make them an address C if you like. I'm just saying, it's technically, the comment period is
Right.
the state agency, Department of Environmental Conservation. So that's who we're writing it.
Because most of this we've already covered in that last letter that went to all of our electeds, but this is like specifically to get to DEC, the comment period. But I do want to discuss, put something in the letter about the uniqueness of this school, and that, this school, it's part of the school, half of the school is really a G&T program, right? So that means that parents are choosing to send their school to this location. Those parents are very nervous at this point, and don't know what's going on, what they're getting into. And they just may decide, we don't want to come back. We're just going to send our kid to the neighborhood school, and not. So we could be faced with a potential school closure if enrollment drops, and that's a big issue. The school is actually one of the very diverse schools, one of the few very diverse schools left in Schools District 2. It is also collated with a District 75 schools that serves children with very special needs. So it's a special school community, and I don't want us to, or the developers or whomever, to lose sight of that. I'm just saying it's important, right? It's another community. They are part of this community, and we don't want to see them fall apart. So it's like in the same way that we're trying to protect the tenants' rights, right? We also need to protect the rights of our school children and families. So to include something in the letter about that as well.
And I was just gonna say, I think that correlates directly to the issue of communication though, because without really nuanced and active communication, it's really easy to just decide that all of the students or all of the families are the same. And we know that they're not. I mean, that's probably true in any school, but it's especially true. Yeah. And so I think like tying that together and making sure that the developers are held accountable to understanding like the uniqueness of the school community and specific.
And I think Josephine said it. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think to your point, Josephine, and to your point, Jessica, that I think a turn or phrase Josephine's used in the past is when you look at this student body, this really truly represents the most vulnerable student population that we have across the board, whether it's disruption via transportation, threat of school closure, the special needs programs, etc. So I wholeheartedly support a strong emphasis on everything that you're saying.
So I will put a list of these comments together. Feel free to email me. And as I say, there's going to be a group of us working on this letter. Yeah. So see what we come out with.
Great. So before we go to older new business, I just want to recognize our new Community Board 4 liaison, Nicole Barr from State Senator Botcher's office. If she's still on, having been on the other side, I know sometimes we're not recognized for joining these meetings, and we appreciate you being here if she is still on.
Oh.
Yay.
Oh, please say hello.
Hi, Nicole. Welcome.
I'm learning the system as I
Oh, I got it.
go. There we go. Okay.
We're putting you on the hot seat for a second.
I'm here.
Hey. Hi. Thanks for joining. We appreciate you being here in your offices, listening in, and you're always welcome to attend these meetings. And if you ever have updates on behalf of the senator, feel free to keep our committee informed. And congrats on your new job.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the presentation today especially about CTE, and it made me start to look into the program more. I have kids, and I was just interested in seeing what it had to say. So thank you for that, and thanks for the shout out, Matt.
It's the goal. All right. So last agenda item: any old or new business to bring forward to the committee? Okay. Oh,
I'm just waiting.
yep. We're waiting.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent.
Guess not. I feel like we would have seen it by now.
Okay.
Wait.
Yes. Oh,
So no, new business in the room first, and then I'll come after.
no, it's better at the end.
Sure. So just an item for consideration. My kids have been lucky enough to go through a school here in District 2, PS11. Everybody in the neighborhood's familiar with it. Bob Bender announced last week he's been the principal at that school for 21 years, and he's been exemplary across the district. There are many leaders within the district that look to his style of leadership and his mentorship. And given that this is going to be his last year, I would just like to propose that the committee consider writing a letter officially recognizing his tenure and thanking him for that. We've got a few months to do it, but just wanted to raise it while it was fresh.
Thank you, Jeff. Absolutely. We can do that.
Jessica?
It's the first committee meeting in the space, right, Jeff?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I brought some champagne. We could do that.
But you know what? You guys have to come in for sex. I don't know what.
If only Prince brought hors d'oeuvres. I mean, you guys would be set.
Wow, it seems like CB4 is a lot more fun than CB2. I have to say.
Just remember you're on YouTube.
She takes it back.
All right, I'm ending the meeting, guys. Take care online.